Welcome to NAB 2025. My name is Matt DeJohn, and we're here to talk about the Ursa Cine Immersive and the workflow of how you take this content from here all the way to the Apple Vision Pro, plus some shooting tips. So this is our Ursa Cine Immersive camera, and it is actually based off of our Ursa Cine camera line. And so from here back, it's the exact same camera as the Ursa Cine 12K LF. So the big difference is we obviously have two lenses and we have two full sensors in here. And that is the same sensor that's in our Ursa 12K LF, but there are two of them. And since we're recording a circular fisheye image, we're getting about 8K per eye in capture. So starting at the front here, our lenses, we have two over 180 degree lenses. That's fixed focus, fixed iris lenses so that we can ensure that the image quality is at the highest level. These lenses are calibrated specifically to this sensor, and that calibration data lives in the Blackmagic RAW file. That's kind of a key aspect of this entire workflow because we're shooting in lens space, we're editing in lens space, and then we're delivering to the Apple Vision Pro in lens space. And that allows us to maintain the fidelity throughout the entire workflow, as opposed to, unwrapping to an equirectangular style image. You're wasting a lot of pixels and the compression isn't as efficient. This gets us the extreme high quality that you can achieve with the Apple Vision Pro. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more about the lens system. And let me actually bring up the image on the screen here. So I routed our video output to this monitor. And so we're looking at two circular fisheye lenses. And that's basically the equivalent of 7 to 7.5 millimeter lens on this size of a sensor. So you're getting over 180 degree field of view. Within this circle here, it's about 180 degrees field of view, and then we extend beyond that. But the deliverable is 180 per eye. These lenses, they're fixed iris. I don't have the exact F number, but they are roughly in the F5.6 range or so. The idea with that is you fix your iris so that you're getting the best performance out of this lens. So chromatic aberration is really, really well controlled. Some interesting things about shooting with this lens, obviously it's extremely wide and distorted point of view. We have a heads-up display on our LCD here that kind of helps you frame and get an understanding of how this will unwrap in the headset for what your natural field of view is. So if we zoom in here, there we go. This inner box represents your field of view in the headset. So that's your natural field of view. If we zoom out, we have extra material around that central box, but this is a really useful guide for framing up your shots. So another aspect about these lenses, it will hold focus from infinity all the way to about 1 meter away from the camera, and actually even a bit closer. And then the focus drops off very gradually. And that's just the nature of these lenses and the nature of this medium. Because the viewer can really look anywhere throughout the scene, you do want infinite focus for your capture. So with this camera, we shoot at 90 frames a second onto the 8 terabyte media module. And in terms of record times, generally our recommended compression ratio is 12:1. And with that compression ratio, dual 8K, 90 frames a second, you'll get about 1 hour and 38 minutes out of one 8 terabyte card. Yeah, because we're fixed iris, your exposure controls really come down to your shutter angle, your ISO, and your ND filters. And for this camera, we actually have an extra ND filter as compared to the other Ursa Cine cameras. We have 2 stops, 4 stops, 6 stops, and 8 stops of ND built in. Yeah, so in terms of monitoring on set, there's a few different options. So right now we're running an SDI out from the camera into our cart that is then being routed from our ATEM 2ME constellation, which is on the cart, to this monitor. And so this gives you a live preview of exactly what you're looking at. Now, if you want to actually preview in the headset, There's a few ways to do that currently. We're still developing all of our different options, whether that's going to be streaming from the camera directly, but currently what we're doing is we're loading the file into Resolve, and you can stream from Resolve to the headset directly. So the interesting thing about this camera, there's a 10 gig Ethernet port. So you can actually mount the media directly in Resolve and access the files without having to remove the mag. So that's one way you can preview your files in immediate playback. Yeah, so obviously the 10G Ethernet lets you pull files directly from the camera, but there's also a workflow where, let's say you have the camera up on a crane or in an accessible spot, you can use the 10G Ethernet to just review what you just shot. And you may still pull the media mag later to offload all of your media. But for immediate preview, it lets you access the files that are on the camera. Yeah, metadata when you're shooting immersive is very important for the Apple Vision Pro. So it starts at the camera. These lenses are calibrated to the sensor, and that calibration data lives on this Blackmagic RAW file you shoot. And as you bring that file into DaVinci Resolve, that metadata is read and passed through by Resolve into the headset so that the headset can unwrap that image into immersive real time. Now, that's one piece of metadata that passes through. In Resolve, we're also adding other parts of the metadata stack that the Vision Pro needs. So all of our transitions and titles and graphics, those all add aspects to the metadata package that ends up in the Apple Vision Pro that lets the content get delivered at the highest quality. Yeah, so once you have the files in Resolve, there's a few things to consider. So firstly, when the files are imported, they'll show up as 3D files. So that is one file, but two eyes per file. You go through the normal edit process, and there are going to be additional immersive aware features that come online over time. This is an early beta version of the software. But finally, when you go to delivery, we have a preset along the top here, all the way to the right, is our Vision OS preset. If you select that, that's what you need to render your file from Resolve to be read by the Apple Vision Pro. Yeah, so some basic shooting tips when you're shooting immersive. Really, this camera is your perspective on the world. So if you want to see what your position of the camera is going to look like, you basically need to put your head where the camera is, and that will give you a sense of what the viewer is going to experience. Now, generally, you want to have this camera completely level and locked off because when the viewer is viewing this material in the headset, they're the ones looking around. So they're effectively panning and tilting as opposed to you panning and tilting the camera. Now, in terms of where you place the camera and the elevation, what we generally find is if we're interacting with somebody who's standing in front of the camera, we want the camera maybe a little bit below eye line, and that's fairly natural in the headset to view from. In terms of proximity, proximity is extremely important. 3 feet is actually a very intimate thing. So really what a close-up generally is maybe even 5 feet away, and you are close enough and you can see enough detail where you can really understand that person's performance and whatnot. To get to 3 feet, it's really another level of intimacy that you're entering there. So camera movement is another thing people are interested in. How can you move the camera, or can you? And the answer is you can, but you need to be very deliberate about it. So generally, you want your camera moves to be smooth and in one axis. One axis is pretty easy to take, so if you're slowly moving the camera forward, then that's going to be fine. You can even crane the camera in slightly, but again, you want that motion to be very measured and smooth. Once you get into kind of 3 axes of motion, let's say you're moving forward and you're craning, but you're also panning, that can be very uncomfortable. So you want to limit camera moves to 1 or 2 axes and really make that a smooth and deliberate move. What I would also recommend is when you shoot your test of that move, check it in the headset and see if that is comfortable, because that's the last thing you want to end up with an editorial is a shot you can't use because it's just uncomfortable. So in terms of audio capture, on the camera itself, we have a stereo microphone for just camera witness audio, and then we have two XLR inputs. But generally, you may want to shoot with an ambisonic microphone as well. And that's going to give you a spatial audio field, which to work with later on. Generally, you also want to combine that with boom mics or lavaliers, more traditional audio capture techniques that you would then take into Resolve and mix in Fairlight with our spatial audio tools to place all those different microphones at the proper spot. Yeah, so this camera is currently available for pre-order, and we've shipped the initial units. We're kind of doing small quantities now, and we're going to be ramping up production all the way into midsummer. Along with that, we have a private beta version of Resolve for those very first users, but these immersive features will end up in Resolve 20 over the next several months. The firmware is also getting refined and updated, but everything is fully operational now with the major features. Similar to Resolve, the major features are in there, but there's going to be more immersive aware tools and the feature set filled out over the next several months.